Good evening, everyone. We're going to call to order the regular Housing and Redevelopment Authority meeting for August 17th, 2020. It's 7 p.m. The first thing we'll do is the attendance roll call. So I'm going to turn it over to Administrative Assistant Dubois.
Thank you, Chair Supple. Okay, Chair Supple.
Here.
Commissioner Elliott.
Here.
Commissioner Reagan-Gonzalez.
Here.
Commissioner Vries-Daniels.
Here.
Commissioner Sandel.
Here.
Thank you.
Welcome, everyone. Our next item of business is the open forum. Administrative Assistant Dubois, could you explain the process and then tell us if there's anyone who's called in or contacted you? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair Supple. So if you'd like to submit comments prior to the meeting, you can do so by emailing ldubois@richfieldmn.gov, or you can call 612-861-9764. And as of this meeting, we are now accepting live open forum comments. We do have a moderator at City Hall to take live calls, so people can call in 612-861-0651, and that's the number you can call to participate live right now.
Okay, so we'll wait for a moment and see if anyone wants to call. While we're waiting on that, another thing is that later on, when we are going to be considering the resolution for the budget and tax levy, we have an option. We don't have to, but we can also open it up again then for public discussion. Would the members of the commission be interested in doing that?
I'd be open to that.
All right, so for anybody who's watching on the live stream, be aware that when we get to that section, we'll open it back up again, and it'll be the same procedure where you can call in, and we'll remind you of the number at that point as well. So I'm not sure what the delay is between when people call and when we go live here, so pause for a moment more.
Chair Supple, currently we have no calls.
Okay, so are we comfortable with moving on with the agenda then?
Yes.
Okay, and then we'll open it back up again when we get to the budget levy part. So the next item would be approval of the minutes of the concurrent City Council and HRA work session of June 15th, 2020, the concurrent City Council HRA and Planning Commission work session of July 20th, 2020, and the HRA Authority meeting of July 20th, 2020.
So moved.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Commissioner Sandel and seconded by Commissioner Elliott to approve those 3 minutes. Is there any discussion? All right, hearing none, we're going to take the vote. Administrative Assistant Dubois.
Thank you. Chair Supple.
Aye.
Commissioner Elliott.
Aye.
Commissioner Reagan-Gonzalez.
Aye.
Commissioner Vries-Daniels.
Aye.
Commissioner Sandel.
Aye.
Thank you. We have 5 ayes.
Thank you. Without objection, I would like to approve the agenda now. Is there a motion to do so?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Commissioner Sandel and seconded by Commissioner Reagan-Gonzalez to approve the agenda. Any discussion? All right, Administrative Assistant Dubois, you could take the roll.
Thank you. Chair Supple.
Aye.
Commissioner Elliott.
Aye.
Commissioner Reagan-Gonzalez.
Aye.
Commissioner Vries-Daniels.
Aye.
Commissioner Sandel.
Aye.
Thank you. We have 5 ayes.
Thank you. At this point, then, we will do the HRA and EDA 2020-2021 budget presentation. So I'm going to turn it over to staff at this point. Executive Director Stark.
Chair Supple. Actually, we will just do the HRA presentation at this portion of the meeting, and we'll come back to the EDA at the next meeting.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, so I'm still like everybody figuring out the technology. Latanya, host, am I still able to share documents?
You're an
it looks like
alternate
I can.
host, so you should be able to.
Okay,
But I have it ready if you need me to pull it up. Okay,
all right, I think it's,
you got it.
okay. So hopefully everybody can see this. Again, we are talking about the 2020 and 2021 HRA budget. The 2020 would be the revised portion and 2021 proposed. I always like to remind you guys of, a lot of what the HRA pays out is salary, and just remind you who you're paying. The HRA pays more than 40% of the salary of 10 employees. And so this is a list of the HRA staff and the percent of their time covered by the HRA. There's myself as the executive director, 62%. Housing and Redevelopment Manager Julie Urban, 86.5%. Assistant CD Director Melissa Paleman is 40%. The housing specialists, who are job share, Kate Aitchison and Celeste McDermott, 90% of their time goes to the HRA. Mert Link, accountant who's with us tonight, 80.5% of her time. Administrative assistant Latanya Dubois, 74.5% of her time. Multifamily housing administrator Lynette Chambers, 2/3 of her time. And then the job shared for the Section 8 techs position is Cindy Velde and Talisa Parson, and they are 100% HRA. I would notice that both Lynette and Cindy and Talisa, they are primarily funded by the federal government through the HAP, or Housing Assistance Program, administrative fees that we collect from HUD. Give me a second. There we go. Just giving a little of the budget history over the years for the HRA. We go back, I don't know, about 8 or 9 years here, and you can see that in 2012, 2013, that era, we were, and 14, we were about $5 million in approved. You also see that there were some lean years in terms of what we actually expended. The HRA budget is a little different than the city budget, or from other budgets, perhaps, in that we're very market driven. And for example, in 2013, 14, 15, and 16, you'll see that we only expended, 44% to 70% of what was budgeted. And the reason for that is we were still coming out of the recession. Developers had not yet really started to build housing and other kinds of development. And so those were years that there just wasn't a lot of development going on. And as a result, we weren't expending the same amounts of money. We plan as if everything is going to happen. And so that's why occasionally we come in a lot less than planned. In 2017 and 18, like I said, we plan as if everything is going to happen. Well, more than everything happened in those years. And that's, just the housing boom. Those are the years where the Star Tribune called Richfield the hottest housing market in the Twin Cities. Those are also the years where the, the City Pages ranked Richfield as the #1 suburb. And so there you'll see we were actually expending more than what we had approved. And we'd kind of become used to those leaner years, and so we weren't budgeting as much because of that. And so last year we were almost right on. We spent 97% of what we had budgeted, and I think that's a good goal to go for. But just knowing that it will fluctuate with the HRA. What you approved last year in this year's budget was $3,551,000. We are suggesting that that be revised, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. So the overall HRA budgets are as follows. The 2020 approved was, as I said, $3,551,000. The revised is $3,740,000, almost $747,000, and then the proposed is a little less than that at $3,693,000 and change. So the 2020 revised budget is a $195,000 increase over the approved budget. The biggest piece of that is related to COVID-19 rent assistance and other COVID-related expenses. Most of the HRA's COVID costs, we believe, will be reimbursed by the CARES Act, especially the rent assistance. I don't remember right now what the rent assistance number is at. Perhaps Julie does. I saw on a spreadsheet $75,000. I think that that's accurate. We are also looking for some of the HRA staff time to be reimbursed. So I'm not sure if that's another $20,000 or something in that neighborhood. So right there, we are looking to have that reimbursement happen. The 2021 proposed budget is $53,260 less than the 2020 revised budget. In the slideshow that was sent to you, there was a typo in this where it talked about being less than the 2019 budget, but it is $53,000 less than the 2020 revised budget. And this represents, even though it's a reduction from the revised, it is a increase over the approved budget that you approved last year, and that's primarily due to increased personnel costs. This just gives you a breakdown of all of the programs, all the budget items in the HRA. I'm not going to go through these line by line, and I apologize. In the slideshow that was sent to you, the header was missing, and so you saw a lot of this information, but weren't able to put it into context. I can just briefly talk about some of these. HRA admin is kind of a catch-all. Really, a lot of things go toward that, especially a lot of staff salaries. And it's pretty flat, I would say. Marketing, you'll see marketing is down 40% this year and 12% next year. We'll talk a little bit more about that, but that's COVID related, why that has gone down so much. Rental housing support, it's gone down nominally because we found other ways of supporting rental housing during the COVID times. Richfield Rediscovered is going down fairly significantly, and I think I'll talk about that in a second. Whereas the new home program is going up, and those are related. And I would just say that Richfield Rediscovered, we talked to you about this a couple of months ago. It's expensive to do these market rate homes, and so we had suggested scaling that back, the Richfield Rediscovered portion, and putting some additional funds into new home and other programs. Rehab loans, that's something that the county administers for us, and that's a pretty flat number as well. Development opportunities is for emerging projects, and I'd have to go back and look at the budget. We had one large expenditure in 2020, but that's the way the development ops budget goes. It's for things we weren't aware of or weren't planning for. So a lot of times when we have an opportunity to acquire a property that we weren't expecting, that's where that goes. Many of these other things are flat, so I won't go into detail. The Cedar corridor is going down. That's largely because we're wrapping up the Chamberlain project, and there isn't as much going on in the Cedar corridor. So that's just a little bit of a run through of some of these line items, maybe more than you cared to hear. Some of our budget highlights, as I mentioned, we've had a lot of COVID-19 impacts. Our employees are working anywhere from 25% to 100% from home. I'm probably the HRA, I'm for sure the HRA employee that's in the office the most. I'm in the office about 75% of the time, but we do have a few people that are 100% from home still. Initially, this was difficult, the technology. None of us were ready for this, and so we've had to do some equipment purchases that affected the budget, but those deficiencies are improving. The rent assistance, I'd said 75,000 earlier. I'm sorry, the number is 125,000 in rent assistance that was provided through VEAP. And again, that's something we're expecting to get back from the CARES Act. This next item is something you may not have heard of yet. We are putting together care packages for our Section 8 and Kids at Home recipients that would include hand sanitizer and cleaning supplies. We're hoping that it's going to include masks. The last I heard, we were still working the masks piece out. It's a little more difficult. Many events, and this is why our marketing budget was down. Many of our events have been canceled, such as the Realtor Workshop and PennFest. And we put a fair amount of work into those. But with COVID, we've had plenty of work to make up for it. Income qualification for Section 8 clients has become more complex with changes in employment. With people either being many people have lost their jobs. Some people have actually picked up more hours or are earning more. So it just varies, but it's just we have 300 and some Section 8 clients, and any month 2 or 3 or 4 have some income changes. But to go through months where 50% of the recipients were having income changes, it just administratively was a lot of work. Housing inspections for Section 8 also became a challenge as we're trying to reduce, have social distancing. And so we've had reduced in-person visits for those inspections and for the remodeling advisor and other services that we provide. And then we did delay some new initiatives to focus on core services and impact from COVID. For example, the apartment liaison program, or the efforts we were going to put into accessory dwelling units. We did have a lot of successes, with the Chamberlain, that's now complete, including the rehabilitation of the 33 units, the 283 new units opened last year and this year. And that includes 64 units of housing affordable to households at or below 50% of the AMI. The Lakeside at Lindale condominiums, so that's the 30 units of luxury ownership, I think maybe now have all been sold and will be occupied this year. And it's estimated to contribute approximately $11,000 a year to Richfield's Housing and Redevelopment Fund to let us do affordable housing elsewhere. The Henley, with its 66 apartments and 7 rental homes, is fully, I say fully occupied. They're fully open. I think they do have a few vacant apartment units left, but they will be fully occupied very soon. And that includes 7 affordable units. The RF64 townhomes, the first 8 are complete and sold. Construction's underway on 16 additional units, and those are affordable ownership, which are affordable to households at, I believe, 115% of the AMI. And we did get Minnesota Housing Funds to expand affordability, going down 20% below that. And then apartment construction for that project is anticipated next year. And if people have questions as I go along, please feel free to let me know.
Can we pause to just say kudos to the staff, because you just gave us a whole lot of good news, and there were a lot of really a lot of work that was done and a lot of good things happening. So thank you.
Well, thank you. And a lot of good things in the works. So the Henley 2, the HRA approved the contractor and preliminary TIF agreement last month for 22 units of rehab and 82 new units of mixed income housing. That would include 16 units at 50% of the AMI. The 6501 Penn site, the bumper to bumper site, we approved a preliminary development agreement to explore construction of mixed use project with potential for more deeply affordable residential units, which is something we're lacking. The HRA approved a preliminary development agreement with the ME to explore reconfiguring the approved mixed-use project to add affordable units and reduce commercial space. The Enclave, the HRA approved a preliminary development agreement there for 130,000 square feet of commercial space. And in this budget, we do have $40,000 for Lakes at Lindale public improvements. And you may remember that this number's been around for a couple of years. First, we were waiting for construction to get completed. Now it's, there's nothing pressing about it. We'd like to get the work done. But other things have kind of pushed it, but we do hope to get that work done. With our housing programs, we awarded 3 loans under the new down payment assistance program and added additional money to the program. We did see a slowdown in activity with the onset of COVID and continued rising housing prices. We completed 2 new homes with Habitat for Humanity, one with universal design features, and 1 purchase rehab with Homes Within Reach, which is a land trust. And so obviously all 3 of these homes would be for affordable households. We sold Emerson Lane, and the 5 homes are now all complete. And I believe they're all occupied now. And if you haven't been out there, I urge you to go out there. And when you do go out there, look at the neighbors' properties. And I think you will see that this will be an improvement for the neighborhood. And I think, certainly for the neighbors there, it was a lot of change, and change can be difficult. I do think in the long run, the neighbors will accept it and be happy with what's out there. It may not be yet, but at someday. And then additional funding budgeted for affordable new home program in 2021. So 1 new construction and 2 purchase rehabs. Some other considerations. So we've talked about pooling. Just to remind you what pooling is, the TIF law says that a city can withhold 15% of increment in a TIF district for use outside that TIF district, but yet within the city, and those are called pooled funds. And our policy has been that if a development builds affordable housing, the developer can keep that 15%. If they don't, we capture the 15%. And so we do have pooling coming in from the TIF districts we talk about here. That money is very restrictive in terms of how we can use it. The money is also growing, and we need to get it spent. We're working with Ehlers, our financial analysts, to give us a more detailed report, especially on the Interchange West Best Buy district, on how much pooling is really available to us. This stuff gets extremely complicated when it comes here, and the numbers are cumulative. And so oftentimes with the TIF district, we also collect 10% in administrative fees. So an example would be in some project, maybe the first 3 or 4 years, we have a great deal more administrative costs. So we could actually be collecting 50% pooling. We're collecting all 25% of that and using it for admin because the needs are so great. And then in later years, we would wean ourselves off of the admin and collect more pooling. And so we just need to do a better accounting of where we're at. And we hope to come back to you in September or October with a much more detailed report on pooling. And And so the last bullet here in that piece is we may have, and I'm predicting we will have unbudgeted expenses later this year. And I think I'm going to be coming back to you probably in October, November, December, saying, pooled money we really think we need to spend. And here are some very good uses for it that are going to help advance the HRA's mission. And so I'm just putting you on notice that that should be happening. Some trends to watch. The HRA funds with few restrictions are shrinking. You know, I've been around a long time. I'm in my 20th year working for the HRA. And when I started, the amount of funding we have isn't that much less than it was 20 years ago. It's just the amount that has fewer restrictions is much, much, much smaller. That's because, added legislation, added kind of legal interpretations have added restrictions that weren't there before. So it's going to be challenging to find permissible ways to spend. Another budget consideration, and this is something we've been doing for a couple of years now. In the past, we looked at the city levy, the HRA levy, and the EDA levy in isolation, just on its own merits. We've been trying to do a better job of looking at it holistically. You know, what are the combined impacts, not only of those levies, but also of bond issuances and how those affect folks. So here are the funding sources and expenditures. The taxes piece of this is the HRA levy. The miscellaneous revenues. I've got something here talking about that, but it's give me a sec. Oh, I can't change my screen. But that's fees that we charge, loan repayments, that is interest that we earn. We've talked about dollar fund or hopefully $1 million that the HRA keeps. The investment earnings on that are pretty good. So that is included in miscellaneous revenues. So under expenditures, you'll see that the personnel hasn't changed greatly. 2020 approved $485,000. That's actually gone down a little bit for the revised with some staffing changes we've made, and then goes up a little bit next year. And that's to accommodate for both cost of living increases and merit increases. And then our levy history. And I can give you a little more detail on this. Let me find my notes. In 2015 through 18, you'll see that we were levying to the maximum. And I think that might actually go back a few years. I think maybe from 2012 to 2018, we were levying to the maximum. Then in 2019, because the city levy was going up to a greater degree than folks felt comfortable with, the HRA was asked to scale back its levy a little bit to help ease the burden on homeowners. And in 2020 was the same. For next year, the maximum amount that the HRA could levy is $711,557. What's being proposed is $618,400, and I think that was about a $95,000 differential. So again, that's something that the HRA is doing to help, in a more holistic way. So with that, we can go through any questions you might have. I know Finance Director Chris Regis had attached a staff report. I don't know if you want me to go through his staff report first, and then we can do questions and discussions, or if you want to do that now.
anybody that has an immediate question before we go on to the staff report?
Chair, I do if you don't mind.
Okay, go ahead, Commissioner Elliott.
Yeah, John, I'm just curious, and I know that we've talked about it before, when you're talking about trends to watch. And so we've got HR funds with fee restrictions shrinking. That makes sense because we have more flexibility in which to use it. I'm trying to figure out why the powers that be can't take a look at this and take a look at the restrictive HR funds that we're trying to find permissible ways. Is somebody not seeing the forest through the trees in regards to the benefit of using those funds for multiple objectives in our city? I'm just trying to figure out why someone at the legislature or someone at the rulemaking hasn't looked at that and freed up some of that money so we can do what we need to do in the city with the funds coming out of TIF financing. To me, it just doesn't make any sense to sit on that and look at it and continue with strict restrictions.
Yeah, and this year and in previous years as well, but this year we definitely put some lobbying efforts into getting that changed. We worked with, oh my goodness. Somebody's gonna have to help me remember who we worked with. Gimmick.
LISC.
LISC. Sorry, the Local Initiative Support Corporation, LISC. LISC worked with several communities, primarily us, Bloomington, and Minnetonka. Those three communities among suburban communities are probably the most sophisticated in TIF. And we put together some proposals for the legislature, and they really didn't get much traction. The legislature, can barely get the things that they have to do done. And so to seek additional things has just been difficult. But we are trying. We're trying also to work with our attorneys and our financial analysts to be more creative, and to, I think, to think about risk management. We just want them to understand how much money we might be leaving on the table to do something that has a 1 in 100 chance of being not permissible, or a 1 in whatever chance, and trying to really do some risk analysis, and whether that's something we should pass up or something we should be a little more, a little more risky on.
Along those lines, John, I mean, I'm trying to figure out is there a lack of trust at the House or the Senate? I mean, I'm trying to figure out why they don't, if we've taken the lead, Minnetonka, Bloomington, and Richfield are sophisticated in this, why don't they listen to us instead of continually opposing or not even coming to talk to us to see what we need and how we would use it? I mean, I'm a little discomforted by it. It seems there's a lack of trust for the various municipalities and using it appropriately. And that our elected officials from here that go to the state should be pounding the drums fairly loudly for us.
Yeah, I can tell you what my opinion is. Like I said, there's us, Minnetonka, Bloomington, certainly Minneapolis and St. Paul, and Duluth and Rochester. There are some cities that use TIF and know what they're doing. But then when you go to the legislature, they're overwhelmed by people from communities that don't use TIF, that don't understand TIF, and think that TIF is a tax break for corporations. And so if you're from Cloquet, or if you're from Keister, or if you're from wherever, you're going to vote this down. It's not going to benefit you. And that's just the nature of Minnesota, the power of the outstate sometimes.
Well, I think anybody that comes on city council or the HRA anything in Richfield, it comes to realize that it's, on the surface, it's complicated, but you and Chris and other people have explained it where it's pretty black and white. And it seems to me it's about a 5 or 10 minute exposition to put that out there so people understand, hey, it's only complicated if you want it to be.
Well, like I said, we'll come back to you, I think in October, and put some numbers to this that will help us all understand the scale a little bit better, and that may change our how we go about this. Maybe it's worth putting more effort into the lobbying side of things on this topic.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
Are there any other questions or comments? With the screen being shared, I can't see everybody. So if you want to speak up, just please do so. Okay, well, hearing no one, I'm going to add a couple of comments of my own. I was really happy to see the Affordable Housing Trust Fund in there because that allowed us to do some of the rental assistance, and I think it's going to be a good program going forward. And also, I was really happy to see the first-time homebuyers program being expanded because that helps households that are underrepresented in the housing market get started in home ownership and starting building up some equity and that kind of thing. So I think those are really, really good programs. So I was very happy to see that. And I think it's good to look at everything holistically, like you said, with the EDA, the city, and the HRA all together. So I appreciate that change in focus as well. Are there any other comments or questions? Okay, then we'll move on to the next agenda item, which
Can I interrupt you for a second?
Sure.
Could somebody, maybe Julie or somebody with more technological sophistication than me, tell me how I stop sharing my window?
So if you hover over the top of your screen, John,
Yeah, I see. Oh, there it
it
is.
should
Stop
say
sharing.
stop sharing.
There it is. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Cool. Thank you. Oh, and before we go on, also the COVID care packages seem like a really fabulous idea. So whoever thought of that, thank you. So our next item is consideration of resolutions approving 2021 proposed Housing and Redevelopment Authority budget and tax levy and the 2020 revised Housing and Redevelopment Authority budget. So Commissioner Sandal, it looks like you're muted, but go ahead once.
Okay, thank you. I can never tell what's muted and what's not. I'm sorry, I did want to speak up earlier and tried, but I didn't get your attention. One of the things, because I was on the HRA and on the city council a number of years ago, and one of the things we looked at back then was we were leaving money on the table when we didn't set the levy enough to get the full amount that we could be entitled to get as an HRA. And if you look at the difference, it's quite a bit of money that we could be using for programming, which we don't have. And everyone is concerned about, providing support for low-income housing. And those are funds that presumably we would be able to throw at the low housing problems when developers come along and there's nothing in their budget. But we're leaving those dollars on the table by not looking at putting the whole amount that we could be collecting to have it available. And it's a substantial decline over the years when you look at that graph bar chart. So I guess I'm concerned about that. And
Thank you. Other comments or questions? All right, well then we're gonna move on to the consideration of the resolutions. So is there someone that would like to move those resolutions? And before we do that, do we need to do them separately or as one motion?
I believe you can do them as well.
All right, thank you. Would someone like to make that motion?
I will move that I want to get the wording right here, adopt the attached resolutions approving the 2021 proposed Housing and Redevelopment Authority budget, tax levy, and the 2020 revised Housing and Redevelopment Authority budget.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
All right, it has been moved by Commissioner Reese Daniels and seconded by Commissioner Reagan Gonzalez. Is there any further discussion? All right, hearing none. Administrative Assistant Dubois, would you please take the roll?
Yes, thank you. Chair Supple,
Aye.
Commissioner Elliott,
Aye.
Commissioner Reagan Gonzalez,
Aye.
Commissioner Breeze Daniels,
Aye.
Commissioner Sandell.
I still have reservations, but I will support the group. Aye.
We have 5 ayes. Thank you.
Moving on, we have the HRA discussion items. Are there any items that anyone would like to discuss? Executive Director Stark, are you going to be talking about the rental assistance program that's available through VEEP, through the COVID-19 Relief Fund in your report, or is that something we should talk about now?
I wasn't prepared to talk about that, but Julie certainly could.
Oh, that would be fabulous. Thank you.
Chair Supple, members of the HRA, unfortunately, I don't have details. Our understanding is the state wants it to go through a single portal, which hasn't been released yet. We aren't really very excited about that idea, but are just one of many receiving funds, so we don't necessarily get a choice. So VEEP is going to work very hard to make sure it's accessible to our residents. And but so they were awarded $2.6 million, and some of that's in admin costs as well, which is great for VEEP because they've added staff and are just working so hard to serve our residents with rent assistance. So I'm waiting to hear from VEEP. I would anticipate hearing sometime this week more details because the initial estimate was that the funds would be available to folks next week. So that was great news. Approximately $700,000 is available to Richfield residents. And so we actually have been talking about doing a mailing to our residents, to our tenants, and then we'll also get that information out to people like Mira and the schools and others who can be sure to share that information.
All right, thank you. And I need to issue an apology because I forgot to open up the phone lines for the public discussion on the budget. So even though we've already voted on it, I do think we should give people an opportunity if they do want to comment on that, because it's not totally final till September 20th. So Administrative Assistant Dubois, could you please say the phone number so we can take some comments? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair Supple. If you'd like to call in live and speak on the topic, you can call 612-861-0651. I'll say that again, 612-861-0651.
Thank you. And again, my apologies. That was my mistake as chair. When we get to the EDA meeting, if someone could help me remember, that would be very greatly appreciated. So we'll pause and see if anyone wants to weigh in and comment. Well, it doesn't sound like anyone is calling in. So at this point, we'll move on and we'll try and do better in the next meeting to do it in a more timely manner. So thank you. Director Stark, do you have anything to report? You're on mute.
Sorry. I want to talk a little bit about our inclusionary housing policy. Last month, we brought you some possible revisions to that policy based on discussions we had last year in recognizing the economic uncertainty that we're dealing with. We had originally scheduled the item for March, but had decided to delay the conversation because of the inability to host in-person meetings. Last month, you decided to delay reactions on these revisions and asked us to develop a plan for community engagement that's safe and still meaningful given the current situation. So some of the engagement ideas we're considering are an online survey, a virtual listening groups, and communicating with and through our partners, for example, Mira or Veep or other folks that we partner with that have more direct communications with folks. Because both the HRA and the Council and EDA would need to approve any revisions, we have scheduled a joint HRA Council work session for September 21st to discuss this. The plan for that work session is to revisit the revisions proposed last year, to discuss new items that have been raised this year, to review a community engagement plan, and to consider whether to move forward with items that have consensus or plan a longer-term strategy for looking at housing needs and goals. So, like I said, I just wanted to update you on that.
Did anyone have any questions for Executive Director Stark? All right, then we'll move on the agenda to the claims.
I'll move the claims.
It's been moved by Commissioner Vries Daniels and seconded by Commissioner Regan Gonzalez to approve the claims. Are there any questions or comments? If not, Administrative Assistant Dubois, could you take the roll?
Yes, thank you. Chair Supple,
Aye.
Commissioner Elliott. I'm sorry, Commissioner Elliott, you're muted. Okay, now we can hear you right now. Commissioner Elliott.
Jesus, aye.
Thank you. Commissioner
Mute
Regan
button, I'll get you.
Gonzalez.
Aye.
Commissioner Vries Daniels.
Aye.
Commissioner Sandel.
Aye.
We have 5 ayes. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further business, we stand adjourned. And then we're going to move on to the Economic Development Authority meeting. Are we ready to start the next meeting, or do we need a pause?
We're ready.
Okay, so it is 7:48 p.m. on August 17th, and we're calling to order the Economic Development Authority meeting for the city of Richfield. Administrative Assistant Dubois, could you please take the roll call?
Yes, thank you. President Supple,
Aye.
Commissioner Elliott,
Aye.
Commissioner Regan Gonzalez,
Here.
Commissioner Vries Daniels,
Here.
Commissioner Sandel.
Here.
Thank you. All members are present.
Thank you. So at this point in the agenda, we have an open forum. So if you could please give us the phone number again, that would be fabulous.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, President Supple. So the open forum is live now, and you can call in 612-861-0651. I'm not seeing any calls yet. Again, if you'd like to call in for the live open forum, 612-861-0651. And you can always submit your comments prior to the meeting by emailing ldubois, that's LDUBOIS @richfieldmn.gov, or you can call 612 861-9764. And we currently do not have any callers.
Okay, so at this point, I think we'll move on with the agenda. Our next item is approval of the minutes of the regular EDA meeting of June 15th, 2020.
So moved.
Second.
It was moved by Commissioner Elliott and seconded by a couple of people, so we'll just say Commissioner Sandal. And are there any questions? All right, Administrative Assistant Dubois, if you could take the roll.
Yes, thank you. President Supple,
Aye.
Commissioner Elliott,
Aye.
Commissioner Reagan Gonzalez,
Aye.
Commissioner Vries Daniels,
Aye.
Commissioner Sandal.
Aye.
Thank you. We have 5 ayes.
Thank you so much. Next is approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Commissioner Regan Gonzalez and seconded by Commissioner Elliott to approve the agenda. Are there any changes or modifications? Hearing none, could you please take the roll? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. President Supple,
Aye.
Commissioner Elliott,
Aye.
Commissioner Reagan Gonzalez,
Aye.
Commissioner Vries Daniels,
Aye.
Commissioner Sandal.
Aye.
We have 5 ayes. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we are going to move on to the staff report on the EDA budget. So I'm going to turn it over to Executive Director Stark.
Thank you. I'm going to try to share my screen again, if you give me a second. The EDA budget is quite a bit smaller and simpler than the HRA budget, so this is really a very quick presentation. So we're getting a little feedback from somewhere. Just let people know. Oh, that's better. Thank you. The 2020 levy, last year's levy was $548,440. The proposed levy is, as it stands now, $529,190. That is actually $30,000 less than the way the budget was originally prepared. But in conversations with Finance Director Regis and City Manager Rodriguez, we decided to scale the EDA budget back by $30,000. Just to let you understand how residents and property owners in Richfield see their tax bill, the HRA levy is a line item in the tax bill. So it will show, how much of your taxes go to the HRA levy. The EDA levy, for whatever reason, is not its own line item. It is lumped in with the city levy. And so that really makes the city levy and the EDA levy much more influential on one another. And in trying to get the city levy number overall to an acceptable increase, that's where the request came in to reduce the EDA budget by $30,000. And I should have said this at the HRA meeting, but just so you understand the way that the HRA and EDA work, in 2018, the bylaws were changed that gave somebody other than the city manager the ability to be the executive director. And when those bylaws were changed, it was specified, though, that if somebody other than the city manager is the executive director, the city manager still has the final. And so Ms. Rodriguez is in the meeting as well. And she and Finance Director Regis went through the budgets with HRA and EDA staff and this does reflect kind of a group effort, but ultimately it's Katie's call. I don't know if Katie wants to add anything to that. I'm putting her on the spot.
Thanks, Director Stark. Yeah, we late in the budget process found out that our LGA was reduced because of the current calculation includes the tax base growth from 2018 to 2019, and it was nearly 13%. And the formula is such that it reduces as your tax base grows, which is very good. This is what we want. But it is a tricky thing to predict, a tricky revenue to predict, and it was late in the process, and so we looked for reductions where we could. And so we asked for a modest reduction with the EDA levy. And because the state is facing a pretty precarious financial situation, there are still risks to future LGA cuts.
So I'll let you know how this really affects the EDA budget. 2019, while it's not shown here, that was the first year that the EDA levied, and in that year we levied $550,000. And if you recall, my suggestion to you was to not really program that money, and so we were using it for kids at home and for transformation home loans, but really not for much else, and for some salaries. And so we had roughly $200,000 from 2019 that just went unspent. So, at the end of last year, the operating what's the word I'm looking for? The amount of reserve funds we had was well over $200,000, probably approaching $300,000. And so we do have healthy reserves given how small our programming is, and our programming is getting a little smaller, as I'll explain to you in a second. And so how it's affecting 2021, you'll see on the screen the two highlighted numbers. That's really what changed. The levy amount was originally $559,190. That's been scaled back to $529,190. And the only thing that affects is the balance. And so instead of having a $113,000 surplus, we now only have a $93,000 surplus. Of course, when you look at 2020, you'll see we are operating quite a bit in the red. So let me go through the 2020 revised and explain that to you. Salaries and benefits actually went down. Kids at home went down a little bit just because with kids at home, it's hard to predict when people, it's a 4-year program, and it's hard to predict when people will go off and how long it will take us to recruit new people. So that's why it went down 15,000, just kind of a variance that we are not surprised at. Transformation home loans, exactly what we had proposed. The apartment rehab, you'll see $200,000, and so that's an increase of $100,000. And you think, well, gosh, why are they increasing that by $100,000? Actually, we had 2019 funds that were promised to Aon for Seasons Park, I believe, and Julie can text me if I'm wrong. It is promised to an apartment rehab that just didn't get expended. The construction, the program didn't go as quickly as we thought it was going to, and so that's just holdover funds. So that's not really spending new money. The business development, you'll see that went from $95,000 to $280,000, and the reason for that was the COVID loans. And the COVID loans, right now we've spent around $145,000 on those. When we wrote this budget, we weren't anticipating getting any of that back, but we're now, I would say, 98% certain that we're going to get that back from the CARES Act. Not only that money that we gave out in loans, but the staff time that was spent administering those loans. So probably another $35,000 there. And so again, we're going to get a great deal of that back. When we came to you, with the COVID business loans, I talked to you about what the exact fund balance was rather than my off the head recollections that I'm giving you tonight, and told you we were going to be using fund balances on that, and that was something you were comfortable with. So those are the changes there for 2020. And that's why you'll see the $252,000 increase. Again, $100,000 of that was because we're spending some 2019 funds, so it's really $152,000. Of the $152,000, we're going to get all that back from the CARES fund. So we feel good about 2020. 2021, the changes that are occurring are with kids at home primarily. So kids at home, I know we just moved it to the EDA a couple of years ago, but the EDA attorney, they learn from other cities, they learn from case law, and they felt that it was safest for the city to create a housing trust fund and for the Kids at Home program to operate out of that housing trust fund. And so the HRA is going to be using their funds to put into the City Council's Housing Trust Fund. And so that's going to free up the EDA money. So that's why that line item went down so much. Otherwise, it's kind of business as has been usual the last couple of years. So some budget highlights. We created an energy efficient business grant program this year. It actually went live like March 1st. And then, the world ended about March 15th. So we haven't gotten a lot of that money out of the door yet. We are just now starting to get some inquiries from people. We do have one business that has taken advantage of those funds, and we're going to start marketing that again fairly heavily. We'd like to get that money spent. There's been high demand for our transformation home loan program, especially with COVID. One of the things we've learned is when people have a lot of time at home, they look around at all the things that they would like to see improved. And so from our inspections have been overwhelmed, but so have all our loan programs. Rent assistance was shifted to the newly created Housing Trust Fund. And I should say on the Kids at Home, the EDA is still putting the money into the Housing Trust to fund Kids at Home. It's just not an expenditure out of the EDA. So we'll have to maybe look next year at how we describe that in the budget, make sure we're describing it accurately. We did award one loan under the apartment remodeling program and one apartment improvement grant. And I talked a little bit about this, but with COVID, the business loan funding, that was $132,000 for 35 loans. We may come back to you this fall with a second round. We're looking at the CARES funds, and if there is additional monies that will allow us to do that, we believe there is going to be. And so it would likely be one of two things, either a second round of business loan funding or some sort of funding for nonprofits and community groups that are affected by COVID, or it could be a combination of both of those. With Kids at Home, one of the things that Kids at Home recipients are required to do is participate in a group called Parent Share. And it's really where they teach each other. Sometimes we bring in speakers. We always bring in speakers, I think. But mostly it's parents teaching each other. And we've had to move that to Zoom rather than in person. And then we do check-ins, and a lot of that happens with partner educational institutions that have counseling degrees and other kind of social service agencies. They do one-on-one check-ins with our Kids at Home families. And so they've changed that as well. So as I said, the EDA budget is a lot more simple So with that, I would stand for any questions you might have.
Administrative Assistant Dubois has kindly reminded us that we need to open this up for public comment. So if she can give the phone number, and then we can also take questions from both the public and the commissioners while we're waiting.
Thank you, President Supple. Yes, to call in to make a live comment, the number is 612-861-0651. That number again is 612-861-0651.
Thank you. While we're waiting to see if anyone wants to call in, are there commissioners that would like to comment or say something? Commissioner Reese Daniels?
I'm going to ask a really dumb question that I know I ask every single year, so I appreciate the answer. But why is the transformation home loans and the apartment rehab loan under the EDA and not the HRA?
Yeah, that is, this is a recurring theme. It's all about restricted funds, and we were funding those out of pooled TIF several years ago, and the attorneys felt that that was a little more risky than they were comfortable with. And so really, that was the impetus for the creation of the EDA, when we said, well, if we can't use pooled funds, these are important programs that everybody believes in. Is there another funding source? And we said, well, we don't have an EDA, and an EDA could levy taxes, and levied taxes are really very unrestricted, and we could use levied EDA taxes to fund those programs.
Thank you. Other comments or questions? Administrative Assistant Dubois, has anyone called in?
President Supple, we have not had any calls.
Okay, thank you. So if there are no further questions, we're going to do this a little bit differently. As Executive Director Stark mentioned, there was some last minute changes in order to try and reduce the amount that was levied. So we would be voting to adopt a resolution that approves, that would approve a taxable levy for $529,190, which is a little bit lower than what's printed in your packet. And if I'm not correct, you can correct me, Executive Director Stark, that we would get a corrected copy out to the commissioners. But I want to make sure everybody's clear that we're voting on a levy of $529,190, and then we'll vote on the second resolution separately. Does that make sense, Executive Director Stark?
Yeah,
All right.
that makes sense.
If someone would like to move that, okay. Commissioner Sandal, you can go ahead if you want to unmute.
I wish I knew how. There we go. Thank you. I'm sorry. I think you may have been discussing this when I first came on, and I didn't hear what was the difference. Why was it $3,000 or something lower? What changed?
It was a $30,000 reduction.
Oh, 30. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and the reason for that was to, in concert with the city levy, to have the two combined levies reach, a desired percentage increase.
Where does it come out of the EDA budget then?
It comes out of a decrease in our surplus. So instead of having at the bottom, instead of having $113,000 surplus, we will only have a $93,000 surplus.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Is there someone that would like to move the levy for the EDA of $529,190?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Regan Gonzalez and seconded by Commissioner Vreese Daniels to set the EDA levy at $529,190. Is there any further discussion? All right, then Administrative Assistant Dubois, could you please take the roll?
Yes, thank you. President Supple,
Aye.
Commissioner Elliott,
Aye.
Commissioner Reagan Gonzalez,
Aye.
Commissioner Vreese Daniels,
Aye.
Commissioner Sandell.
Aye.
We have 5 ayes. Thank you.
Thank you. Then we're going to go on to the second resolution. That is the resolution authorizing revision of the 2020 budget of the Economic Development Authority of Ridgefield. And that one will be as printed in our packet. Executive Director Stark, did you want to say anything about that?
No.
You've already explained it in your report. Would someone like to move adoption of that, approving that resolution?
Moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Commissioner Regan Gonzalez and seconded by Commissioner Vreese Daniels to approve the resolution which authorizes the revision of the 2020 budget of the EDA of Ridgefield. Are there any questions or discussion? All right, then Commissioner Dubois, if you could take the roll.
Yes, thank you. President Supple,
Aye.
Commissioner Elliott,
Aye.
Commissioner Reagan Gonzalez,
Aye.
Commissioner Vreese Daniels,
Aye.
Commissioner Sandell.
Aye.
We have 5 ayes. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we move on to EDA discussion items. Is there anything that anyone wants to bring up? You mentioned, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to echo the gratitude that Chair Supple shared at the HRA meeting for all the amazing work that our staff is doing with both the HRA and the EDA. We just are always able to offer such a diversity of amazing programs that are useful to our businesses, our families, our residents, and then of course they really invest in the future of our city. So thank you to the staff for all you do. Again, not just with the HRA, but the EDA as well. We're very lucky for everything you do for us.
Thank you. Any other comments? I have one question. Would someone be able to tell us about what's going to happen with Seasons Park? Because I think that was good news, and I don't know if a lot of the general public knows about it.
Yeah, maybe Housing Manager Urban could share.
Sure, Chair Supple, members of the HRA. So what Chair Supple is talking about, she signed many documents in the last month relating to the refinance of the Seasons Park mortgage. They were able to refinance with Minnesota Housing their mortgage. The increase in value will enable them to free up, I think it ends up being about $6 million in rehab funding. Back in June, you guys approved subordination of your loan. The HRA provided a purchase assistance loan, 3 years ago now. And then the EDA had, as we've just talked about, Chair Stark or Executive Director Stark talked about, the EDA has also provided them apartment remodeling loan. And so those mortgages had to get in line with this big mortgage. And so $6 million is now available. They closed last Thursday. And now I think I saw the authorization today that they can get started on work. They've already applied for roofing permits, so there'll be new roofs there. They've had water issues in the garden level apartments for many, many, many years. And so they're going to really be trying to get at the core of that and get that addressed, and then upgrading units themselves, doing some security issue upgrades and things. And I believe repaving the parking lots, and which I think will actually makes a difference in appearance, I think. So yeah, it's exciting. We're happy for them, and glad that we could be a part of helping to make sure that could happen. So good things to come.
That's great news.
Thank you so much. Is there anything else that anyone would like to discuss? Okay, then we'll move on to the Executive Director's report. Executive Director Stark.
Thank you. So with the HRA and EDA, you've approved the 2 budgets tonight. I gave the PowerPoint, which is maybe 25 slides, but you all received the entire budgets. When printed out, that's about an inch thick binder of material. A tremendous amount of work goes into that budget. Certainly Julie Urban and myself do some of that work, but the vast majority of that work is done by CD accountant Mert Link. So I want to thank Mert for all the effort she puts into this. I would say Mert probably works more Saturday. Well, I know she works for sure more Saturdays than anybody else in the community development department. She might work more Saturdays than any other city employee that's scheduled to be Monday through Friday. So again, I just want to thank Mert. And I'd mentioned possibly a second round of business loans or COVID loans. I imagine we'd be coming back to you in September, October with that, because that money has to be out our door by November 15th. So the clock is ticking. We really need to, if we're going to do something, get that moving. And so what I would ask you, because at least a couple of you are business owners, and you're all in one way or another involved in businesses and nonprofits around the community, to think about what kinds of businesses and organizations in our community are in need of help, and maybe some ways that we could help them. And if you want to communicate those directly to me, then we can maybe work those into whatever programming we come up with.
Yeah. If I can, John, are you the best contact person for someone who has an interest in the program?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Again, thank you very much. And I think it's important to realize that this was kind of an innovative thing, and that some of the other neighboring cities have been looking at our model and figuring out how to do things. So much, much appreciated. All right, we'll move on to claims.
Moved.
Second.
All right, I missed who moved that, so wave at me. Oh, okay. You. So it was moved by Commissioner Regan Gonzalez and seconded by Commissioner Sandal to approve the claims. Are there any questions? All right, then if not, we'll call the roll. Administrative Assistant Dubois?
Thank you. President Supple?
Aye.
Commissioner Elliott?
Aye.
Commissioner Regan Gonzalez?
Aye.
Commissioner Vries Daniels?
Aye.
Commissioner Sandal?
Aye.
We have 5 ayes. Thank you.
Thank you so much for all your work, and we stand adjourned. Good night.